Welcome everybody to Silverstone, where round number 3 of the 2024 British GT Championship is almost upon us. 3-hour race tomorrow. The Silverstone 500, arguably the biggest race of the British GT season, is the headline act here this weekend. But first, we've got the small matter of deciding the grid for what is set to be a 3-hour epic. It is Andy McEwen and Joe Osborne in the commentary box to talk you through what's set to be a frenetic hour of qualifying action under leaden skies, chilly ambient temperature, a bit of a breeze blowing across the circuit, but generally pretty good conditions actually. It is dry at last, but that in itself actually could present a bit of a headache for some of the teams and drivers because it's the first dry running they'll have had all day so far. Joe, this is always an exciting qualifying session. In a way, it should matter less than some of the other qualifying sessions. They've got 3 hours tomorrow to sort things out, but there's a little bit of extra prestige comes with starting on the front row here, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. It's a mega circuit. As a driver, you really want to deliver that to the team. Of course, yes, it's a longer race, so it's slightly less important. But the grid size swelling to 42 cars, everyone wants to be near the front because any car that you qualify behind and you think you're faster than is obviously time lost in that race. So, yeah, these guys have had 4 hours of practice before qualifying, but the amount of dry laps has been a pretty much zero for all the teams. Some teams managed to get slicked on for a bit, but the lap times weren't really representative because it was still damp and greasy. So there's actually a lot of unknowns going into this qualifying session, so it's going to be quite a hard one to call pre, and I think even after quali that might not be everyone's true pace, and with them work overnight to the cars, we might not see the order as the pace is in quali as it is in the race. So I'm super excited on all fronts.
Yeah, music to my ears that. We like unpredictability in motor racing, and the Silverstone 500 often throws that at us in bucket loads. Right, you've met me, you've met Joe. There's one more member of the team to introduce you to. Down in the pit lane, as always, his second home is Bryn Lucas.
Yeah, thanks very much, Andy. Well, we are in the pit lane. It's always an exciting time ahead of the Silverstone 500. The weather conditions, as you say, well, they have changed a fair bit. It's now what appears to be a drying track, and you can see behind a whole array of GT3s ready to take it to the track, and a man next to me right now who had a particularly good start to the season at Alton Park, Ricky Collard. It's great to see you here, and you're fashioning a beautiful tash.
Thank you very much. It's the Daytona 500, we've got the Silverstone 500, so I thought I'd bring out a special tash and the mullet, and yeah, the Lambo's working really well so far this weekend. Got a lot of work still to do, but you know, the conditions are difficult, and that's where the Lambo works really well.
Well, this the car around here is always very impressive, and looking across the garage at Sandy, he's pretty good around here too. But talk about you and your dad at Alton Park. What a great start to the season it was for you both.
Mate, honestly, we couldn't have asked for a better start. We done this just to have a bit of fun, you know, and try and, obviously we've got the goal of that we want to try and be competitive.
Well, we will get back to Ricky and Bryn in a moment or two. A couple of audio glitches down in the pit lane, but it's a shame. I was looking forward to hearing more from Ricky Collard there, who claimed that fantastic victory with his father, Rob, in the Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini last time out at Alton Park in the season opening race. Race 2 also went to Barwell, and that went to the teammate car of Alex Martin and Sandy Mitchell. So it's actually a Barwell Motorsport 1-2 in the championship, heading to Silverstone. But, Joe Osborne, Silverstone hasn't always been the happiest of hunting grounds for the Lamborghini, at least on raw pace. However, Barwell Motorsport have a habit, don't they, of overcoming that and still finding their way at the pointy end as they did last year.
Yeah, exactly. I've quizzed and grilled Mark Lemmer, the team boss there at Barwell, how he does it, the tenacity that he sort of instills in his whole team. They always have a bit of a left field strategy. We say it every year, there's one too many stops here that the teams have to complete, and you've got to try and lose it, and Mark Lemmer somehow makes it disappear up his little sleeves. But yeah, absolutely interesting to see where that goes. We can see the Silverstone circuit here, the longest lap that we go to, 3.66 miles. The interesting bit about that is trying to keep the tyre alive. We know the new tyre, the Pirelli, is a very peaky tyre. Normally we see 3 or 4 laps, but if the lap distance is twice as long, you get half the amount of laps. So I was hearing some drivers complain they're only getting 1 fast lap before the drop-off. So there's a lot to consider here as the cars leave the pit lane for Quali 1, the AM session of GT3. There's going to be a lot of jostling for position, will be my prediction. Some teams, as we see Giacomo Petrobelli about to leave, no wheels on yet, so they're thinking they want to leave a little bit later, try and find that track speed, track time. You can see the Century BMWs running Lionstern. Johnston followed by our reigning champion, Darren Leung. You can see the number 1, the gold bits on the car, looks amazing. Then followed by Carl Cavers. So Century are on pit exit, so you kind of assume they wanted to get the advantage of that and get their cars out first. So be interesting to see if they're going to then space out. At the moment, Darren Leung's just probably getting a slipstream off him, but the negative of that is you do lose a bit of front aero in these cars because the air's turbulent. It doesn't quite go, as you can see. Darren still trying to look for a bit of tyre temperature as well. All the drivers be looking at their dashes, seeing their tyre temperatures and tyre pressures to see where they are in the window. If they're slightly lower than what they expect or want, they will be just weaving and potentially braking a little bit harder just to generate that heat.
Darren, really the latest in quite a long line of British GT success stories, isn't he, really? Came into the championship as a relative unknown, I think, in the grand scheme of things. We'd followed some of his one-make racing on the British GT package for a few years, but a very, very inexperienced driver, really, Darren. But I suspect with the guidance of SRO Motorsport and his very talented teammate Dan Harper last year, able to sail through to the championship. They won here at Silverstone, remember, after that terrific late scrap that they had with Sandy Mitchell in the Barwell Lamborghini. Could we be in for a take 2 of that battle here tomorrow afternoon? I wonder. The BMWs should be pretty strong, but as Joe said, we don't really know where the form is because we've had so little dry running. We're about to find out, though. The first flying lap's beginning, and to your point, Joe, we only have 7 3/4 minutes to go. Keeping that tyre alive is a struggle, though, isn't it? And particularly because, actually, you do most of the hard work in the first sector here, don't you?
Yeah, so fast as we come into Maggotts and Beckett's complex.
Ooh.
See a big old slide, maybe the curb unsettling Johnston there a little bit. Should be able to complete a good lap here, a little bit wide there. Rear looking very loose, so I'm hoping for him the tyres aren't quite up to temperature and in the window, and that car's only going to get better for him. He's got a decision to make. Have I now ruined this lap already, and should I back off a little and save the tyre, or do I need to keep pushing? It's really stuck between a rock and a hard place. Could be a red flag, so you should have pushed, or you might kill the tyre. Can't do it. See Darren Leung going real deep into Stowe there, missing the apex by quite some distance. So I would say these Century BMWs have been set up to come in a bit later in this qualifying, maybe lose a bit of the peak of the tyre, but have more laps, which is normally the better strategy for the AM. Give them 3 or 4 chances of a fast lap, rather than having the gun to their head with a bullet already cocked and ready to go through their skull.
Well, Johnston pushing on, but as you said, these BMWs looking very, very tricky in the cold temperatures here at Silverstone. We're getting purple sectors elsewhere, but not really from the 2 cars on your screen. There is the reigning champ, Darren Leung, who these days can count himself as a World Championship racer, competing in the World Endurance Championship for 2024 in their new GT3 class, so a car that he is familiar with, and this is a track that he is very familiar with indeed. And he's definitely closing in, I would say, on Johnston, isn't he, on this lap, but I doubt this will be either of these drivers' fastest laps of the session. The purple sectors really are coming from drivers further back. Mark Radcliffe fastest of anybody in Sector 1. Sector 2 is topped by Matt Topham in the Aston Martin, and Darren Leung now fastest in Sector 3. We'll get our early benchmark time anyway, and remember, a unique qualifying format in a way to British GT, really, where it is not just the drivers' individual fastest times that count. We will add whichever fastest time we get from this session to the fastest time from Session 2, where the pros jump in the cars, and it's the cumulative time that gives us the grid order. So this is only a part of the job, but Joe, such an important part of the job.
Yeah, it's half of it, but the disparity in the AMS is even bigger. As Ratcliffe going P1 at 2:1.1. I think the pole for the AMS should be in the 59s, if not the 58s. From testing a few weeks back here, I was talking with some of the teams and seeing the lap times that they were getting. And yes, we've not had much dry running, but the track actually should be quite fast because it is cool. There's not a lot of rubber down, but these Pirellis don't really need a lot of rubber down to be fast. The air temp's the important things for the engines, as we see Kakad coming in to this final sector, actually a 4th sector at Silverstone. We're so used to 3 sectors, but due to the length of the track, it is split into 4. So you can see his previous 3 have been mega, and he should be somewhere in the mix as Rob Collard goes fastest at 2:08. So we're getting closer, aren't we? And purples are still lighting up the timing screens.
Rob Collard, former champion for Barwell SRO Motorsport wrapped his championship up right here at Silverstone a few years ago, and picking up where he left off in a way, fastest so far. But Sasha Kakad in the Audi that we followed through the latter part of that lap goes second quickest, 3.5 tenths slower. Radcliffe third, Darren Leung, the reigning champ, is fourth, and Ian Loggy, always a factor here at Silverstone, completes the top 5 at the moment. We may only be 1 lap into the session, but the top 8 are covered by only 7/10 of a second, with still some drivers yet to show their best.
Yeah, and this driver here, Mark Radcliffe, is showing his best. Purple, fastest of anyone. Green tick 2, he is catching Simon Orange though. The other orange McLaren in front of him, run by Orange Motorsport. There's enough oranges there, isn't there, to get us through. He should be clear for this lap, but I think his next lap might get sacrificed. With only 4 minutes remaining, he would get the next one plus 1 more, so he might actually have to give up the next one to get himself some space into Brooklands. Late apex, can he get it back to the curb? He can. Into Luffield, break in, run away from the curb, create a double apex so you can straighten your exit, get the throttle down. McLaren looking brilliant there, isn't it? Uses the curb, no more than he should do track limits wise. He's going to break the beam. What are we going to see? Needs to be in the, at least in the 2-minute flats, and he goes to a 2-minute flat .1. Pole position so far.
By just over 1/10 of a second from Giacomo Petrabelli, who also beat Rob Collard's time whilst we were watching. So it is now the top 2 covered by just over 1/10 of a second. Another half a second though, back to Rob Collard in third. Track limits are already rearing their ugly head. Car 22 having a lap time disallowed. That's Carl Cavers in his BMW, losing a lap time further down the order, but a good lap there from Mark Radcliffe. Can he stay at the top? Well, perhaps not, because Kevin Say, further back, 5th quickest at the moment in the number 18 Mercedes, has got personal best in Sector 1, fastest of anybody in Sector 2, and I suspect is about to jump up the order.
Yeah, as we see Rob Collard on screen here going P1 again, a 59.9, so we are sub 2 minutes, a barrier that eluded us for so long in GT3 racing, but the cars have just got so fast. We're now probably into the 57s when we see the pros in the next session. Rob obviously super fast, placing the car perfectly. You can see the car, how loaded it is, those front inside wheels popping up as we do go to Kevin Say. As you said, he's on a mega lap here at the moment, leaving the final corner. The driver will just be staring at his delta time. Is it falling away? What's he on for? The team will be telling him it has to be in the 59s now to be in with the chance, and it is a 59.7, P1 by 2.5 tenths.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a good effort, that, but Petrabelli is going quicker further back. Not a great second sector, but the first and third sectors have been strong. So could Aston Martin challenge for provisional pole? The answer in the end is no. The lap time just going away from him slightly in the middle there. Ends up third, though, in this first part of GT3 qualifying. We then do it all again with the GT4s later on, so 4 qualifying sessions for you to enjoy, the first of which has less than 2 minutes remaining. Lots of personal best sectors coming in, and actually a personal best lap for Darren Leung, who jumps now into second position, exactly 2/10 slower than Kevin Say. So Darren Leung then up into second position. Sasha Kakad, meanwhile, who was right up there a moment or two ago, is now down in 8th position, and the Audi driver, personal bests in the first 2 sectors still. So they are, at least the AM drivers at the moment, continuing to improve as the session goes on, Joe.
Yeah, definitely. And everyone starting their lap now is on their last lap. Obviously only 1 minute and 20 left. So next time they come past will be checkered flag for them. But Kevin Say is P1 and on a double purple. So half the lap has been amazing so far. What else can he finish with? He is 2/10, as you said, safe at the moment from reigning champion Darren Leung, but he will want to cement that. And because they are aggregate times, yes, it's maybe just an extension of his P1, but that means that his teammate Maxi Gutz has got more headroom to be slower than, for example, Darren Leung's teammate of Vantor. So if he's 2/10 slower than Vantor, they would still be on pole, is how the math should work out.
Indeed so. Now he's 4/10 underneath his current pole position time, but behind him Darren Leung is going faster, so this is going to be fascinating in the closing stages. Kevin Say will have time for 1 more lap if he wants it though, because he's rounding Luffield with 30 seconds to go. Won't take him that long to get to the timing line, so this is likely going to be, almost certainly going to be, a new fastest time in the session. The question is whether or not Darren Leung can challenge it. What is the new benchmark then? Through he comes across the timing line at 58.9. We're into the 58s just, but what can Darren Leung do? At the moment he's 9/10 adrift of what was a mega lap from Kevin Say, but might still be beatable.
Yeah, do you remember what I predicted? It should be in the 58s at least.
You did.
Kevin's proved me right. They had a miserable Oulton Park, didn't score a single point there. For my sort of championship favourites on the cards, Mercedes factory driver Maxi Gutz, Kevin Say super fast AM, 2C's Mercedes, the recipe was perfect, but the cake was terrible at Oulton Park, so hopefully they can get their recipe slightly more in tune here. Mark Radcliffe No purples, but some greens into this last sector again. We've seen him through here before. It looks nice and smooth. Is he going to get greedy? You can use a bit of track limits on the exit mark. Trust me, there's no camera, no sensor. Use the green bit. Thank you, mate. And that just opens it up. Why do we run wide? We get rid of the steering lock. We carry more speed, less time, more happy. Checker flag is out. Where do we go? P4, up 2 places. Decent lap. Doesn't quite get sub 2 minutes.
Indeed, the same true, by the way, of Darren Young. Well, actually, he did get sub 2 minutes, but only gained a 10th on his previous best. But we might have a new player. Morgan Tilbrook has left it late, but the man who currently is only 9th fastest in the number 77 McLaren is on a flyer. It's not quite going to be enough to go to the top, but it should leapfrog him several positions up the order. Balf, meanwhile, goes third. That was another late place, and the McLaren's getting quicker as the session goes on, but Tilbrook will be top McLaren, second quickest, within half a second of Kevin Say's time. That is not bad, Joe.
Really, really good. And as you said, the McLaren coming late of Balf, the sister car here. So Garage 59 doing maybe a more extreme sort of strategy than I thought Century were, the BMWs. To be able to do that lap on lap 5 around Silverstone's kind of unheard of. So they've obviously got a very fast race car as well, I would take from that. So when Tilbrook hands over to his teammate Clutton and Balf hand over to Smalley, maybe we need to keep an eye on the timing screens a little bit longer for that car than we were seeing potentially from Collard, who did his lap early. Darren Lewing was kind of in the middle of the road, wasn't he? Kevin Say, same towards the end. So this tyre hanging on a little bit. Petrobelli there, started again. The session really strong, wasn't he? He looked like almost odds on to be definitely on the front row. And he's all the way down in 9th position. But he's handing over to Johnny Adam, super rapid co-driver. So their day might not be done. You think 9th's not great, but not awful. But Johnny Adam, I think, could and should maybe get that car maybe into the top 6 would be my prediction for that Blackthorn 87 GT3 Aston Martin Evo.
Indeed, nicely done. Yeah, they are a second off the fastest time, but actually 4/10 of an improvement would have put them 4th. So very, very close, isn't it, towards the second half of the top 10. But a fascinating first part of qualifying is done with. That was the AM session, if you like. So the slower, the less experienced of the two drivers out in session 1. But for session 2, it is the turn of the pros, and this is going to be a very, very competitive conclusion to GT3 qualifying before, as I said, we go and do it all again for GT4. So Max Goetz getting himself ready. Kevin Say will bring the 2Cs Mercedes in, and it was the 2Cs Mercedes at the top of the times after part 1 of qualifying. Qualifying 1 done for the GT3s. Say fastest. Tilbrook with that late improvement for Garage 59 goes second, ahead of championship leader, that was Alex Martin, and Rob Collard, behind him. So again, the Barwell cars very, very quick, very evenly matched. Loggy was 5th ahead of Darren Young, the reigning champ, 6th. Balf was 7th ahead of Ratcliffe, Petrobelli and Simon Orange to complete the top 10. John Ferguson 11th, Sasha Kaked dropped to 12th in the end ahead of Matt Topham, the best of the Aston Martins. And in fact, again, the Aston Martins very evenly matched, only 7 thousandths between Matt Topham and Andrew Howard, 13th and 14th. Carl Cavers was 15th ahead of Chris Buncombe, Richard Neary, Mark Smith, Lucky Kera, and at the back of the field we have the number 84 of Andrew Gilbert. So that was part 1 of the session. In fact, not quite at the back. We've got 22 GT3s out this weekend. Mike Price was 21st quickest, and then it was the Century Motorsport BMW which completed the running. That's the number 14 with Michael Johnston at the wheel. First car out of the pit lane. They're last in the times, but Joe, they've got Dan Harper to jump in now for part 2.
Yeah, my only fear is as mega as Dan Harper is, that car was 5.3 seconds off pole, and Johnson isn't a 5.3 seconds off driver, so hopefully it was a problem they can fix in this little interlude. And I say it's little. The fast lane and the green flag has just been opened and waved, so the 10-minute clock is already ticking down. You can see Radcliffe getting out of the first of the Optimum McLarens there, handing over to Tom Gamble. Maxi Gotts there opening the door to Kevin Say. I say what a good job he's done there. Maxi Gotts feeling under pressure, I would say now. When you inherit a car that's just done pole position, you know there's not an excuse that isn't involving you. Kevin Say maybe just giving him a few sort of tips, saying what he felt. They might have had a bit of pre-discussion, maybe try this curve, maybe try this traction control setting. There's time just to give a little debrief. 2C guys getting the wheels off. Then we go to Race Lab and see those Pirellis. They would have been brand new. Another set of new tyres going on. Ewan Hankey waving in the mechanic there, maybe just struggling to get his window net in. I think they're super tight, those window nets. Obviously for safety is great, but as a driver, there's nothing more annoying when trying to plug it in and feeling very inferior that you probably should have done a bit more work at the gym. But yeah, these new tyres, I think we're going to see probably a 2-second drop off in the race. If they start a stint on new to where they'll be at the end, with a fuel burn off, you save 100 kilos, but new tyres around Silverstone at the moment. Such a big gain to be had as we go to Johnny Adam on his outlap from Jan Mardenberg. Great to see him back in the championship. Raced against Jan when he was just a gamer and he came onto the scene, and he was rapid from the start, but such a mature driver back then on young shoulders. But now, with all the experience he's had out in Japan, now he's a film star. I'm not sure if you've watched the film, but yeah, let's hope that his driving's better than the film.
I'm glad you said that. He will certainly be keen to try and do well, though. Had a very short stint in British GT all those years ago, but a pretty successful one with that win at Brands Hatch in a super close run to the checkered flag. Who knows, even after 3 hours of racing tomorrow, we could have a similarly close conclusion. That, though, is car number 87. They won the race out of pit lane anyway, and Johnny Adam taking over from Giacomo Petrobelli. Before the lap time start coming in, though, let's head down and hear from the man who has put his car on provisional pole position.
Yeah, and that's not me though, is it? That's Kevin Say that's right next to me. Kevin, that was a pretty mighty few laps you put in there, and looking at the timing screens, almost half a second up on Tilbrook behind.
It was very tricky for the last few days. It was raining and shine, and good that every setup change we made over the last 2 days has been on the positive side, and of course the team knows the car very well. Of course Max knows the car very well, so yeah, very happy that I put a lap together. It was dry, all dry today, so that's all good.
But then, of course, Max gets in the car, and you've already given him a half a second head start on the others. So that gives you a good position looking at maybe pole position for tomorrow.
Maybe, yeah, that's our hope. Let's see. Tomorrow's a long race, a 3-hour race, so let's see. Yep.
Very quickly, before we have a look back at the track and see what's going on out there, talk us through the conditions, because it has dried out on track.
Right.
Did you say anything to Max about any pointers of where you can find pace?
No, actually, it is completely dry now. It is completely dry. We saw the races before us, the Ginettas and the GB3s. They're all doing dry lap time, so it's all dry, bone dry.
All dry, all good, Kevin. Thank you very much. Andy, back to you.
Thanks, Bryn. So Kevin Say has got the job done in Q1, Q2 underway now, and we'll have to wait and see whether or not his very experienced co-driver Maximilian Gertz can get the job done in part 2. The super slow-mo shows the car at work, and really, Joe, I think does a great job of showing the forces that go through the car, even at a billiard smooth sort of circuit like Silverstone.
Yeah, you could see the front tyre we're looking at, his front right, was actually locking. You could see it slowing down as it hit the curb coming into this last corner at Luffield. So even with ABS, it's not able to deal with it. If the car's in the air, the systems can't deal with physics, and it just ever so slightly sort of confuses the computer on how much it should be releasing that brake when you are heavy under. But I love that slow-mo, especially with the Mercedes. So much body roll. You see the titanium skids going. Fran Rueda here, one-off entry. Andrew Gilbert, maybe not where he would have wanted to be in his qualifying, but what can Fran do? He was quickest in one of the sessions on the Friday test. Marcus Clutton. Orange and McLaren seem to be quite a common theme, aren't they? It's quite hard to spot them considering we've got four orange ones now run by 3 different teams, but it keeps us on our toes. Into Max and Beckett, smash the curb on the right, roll off the brake. See Marcus all over the curb on the left as well. Headlights flashing away as it's trying to self-balance itself through there. Onto the hanger straight. First real chance of the lap to have a look. How was that first sector? Marcus is going to be breaking the beam any second now. How's that first sector looking for Clutton? Pretty good. This is going to be an all right lap for his kind of first main banker, as it was through Stowe. Track limit super hot there. It's very hard to see, but you just want to unwind the lock. The corner kind of dog legs back it. There's a slight kink, which is a big annoyance here. Change the sausage curbs now, so we can use a bit more through Vale into Club. You can really get it over there, hold it out wide. Should be flat through here. Nice and legal again on track limits. Into new turn 1. Abbey, get it over. You can actually use the entry curb to help open the corner up, pick the throttle up. Easy flat through the left here at Farmers. We go on board now with Sandy Mitchell starting a lap. Nice traffic. No one to be seen in front. He's done a good job setting this lap up, but this lap we're on is a quick one actually. Breaks the beam, a 1:56.6. I think that is a lap record. Andy, hit me with some facts.
It is. It beats his own qualifying lap record, which was from 2 years ago, 56.7. So on his first attempt, Sandy Mitchell underneath his own qualifying lap record. That was phenomenal. He's 3/10 quicker than Adam Smalley, who was also flying on that lap, but you did predict that the lap times would tumble, and already that is the case. The question is, though, is that going to remain the time to beat? We saw in the Am part of qualifying. The lap times got quicker and quicker, perhaps as more rubber got laid down over the course of the session, and there are still those who will look to challenge.
Yeah, and he's purple in sector 1 as well. Wow. And you can see the black box above that air duct actually is delta. So I can see he was 1200ths up as we go to Hugo Cook coming into the last sector now. The Audi so similar to the Lamborghini in so many of its components. Obviously VAG owning both of the manufacturers there, same engine, but different aerodynamic philosophy, and we normally see the Audi go better at higher downforce tracks and the Lamborghini going better at lower downforce tracks, which Silverstone kind of sits in the middle of. It's such high speed, it is high downforce, but then you don't want the drag that you get from that higher downforce. Hugo going to be breaking the line any second now. Where's that going to put him? P6, that's brilliant actually for someone that we've not seen in the championship so much. That is a really, really strong lap.
P6 in the session, P9 on the grid. Remember, the times are combined after this session, and it's the combined time that gives us the grid. So the timing tower on your screen, that is how the cars would line up at the moment. So despite that effort from Sandy Mitchell being fastest in the session, it's not quite enough to overhaul car number 18, but it's not very much between them. I think only just under a tenth and a half more would Sandy Mitchell have to find. And remember, he's gone fastest of anybody in sector 1 on this lap. Gertz is improving as well, though, in his efforts to try and defend that pole position. So at the moment it's Mercedes, Lamborghini, BMW and McLaren would make up the first 2 rows of the grid, but the times are so tight. There you can see them under a tenth and a half in it, but has Mitchell had the best of the tyres, Joe?
Well, we see the pros. Well, it's obvious. He did a 56.6, so 2.2 seconds quicker than pole position the AM. So the energy's got to go somewhere, and it's through the tyre. So the Pro just uses the grip more to get the lap time, but the perverse nature of that is that you lose it. The sparks being flung up there by Gotts. He'll be being told where he is at the moment. Like you said, he is P1, tenth and a half clear, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I think that's a big ask for Mitchell to find on his second lap. His second lap's just completed 58.6, so 2 seconds slower for Mitchell. Was that a mistake? Was that him backing off? Or was that the tyre dropping off by the 2 seconds that I said it kind of could do? Who else is on the move? Hankey's just done a lap, put him up to P9 in this session. We're not seeing much from the BMWs, are we? That's my surprise at the moment. At the moment, the fastest in this session in BMW-wise, Marcello, P11. Then we have to go all the way back to 21st for the first century one of Plato, and then Harper. We know his teammates struggled in Quali 1, so is that a problem for that car, or is that the pace they've got?
Well, let's find out then. What can Max Gertz do? Crosses the line, but in the end, no improvement. So Gertz is on provisional pole, but only 5th quickest, actually, in this part of the qualifying session. But I made point of how close the times were in Q1. They're even closer in Q2. The top 12 cars in this individual session are covered by exactly 1 second. 1 second covers Sandy Mitchell's fastest time all the way down to Johnny Adam, who's his 12th fastest in this particular session. Adam, though, is 9th on combined times right now. Adam Small will be right on board with, though, heading down the Wellington Straight. Now, interestingly, Joe, I think I just saw flash up, yes I did, the BMWs that have been absent largely in this second part of qualifying so far, perhaps now starting to find some pace, because Dries van Tor, fastest of anybody in Sector 1.
Yeah, so my motivational speak has helped from there, but yeah, again, quite late in the session. Like you said, he's up to 3rd in this session now. Purple Sector 1, what's that going to do for them overall? Sector 2 is okay, but just riding on board with Smalley, I'll cut back to that. We came out of the loop and you can really hear the car get into the traction control. So maybe we've just lost a little bit of rear tyre there as we go to Dries van Tor, coming into this new complex, into slow number 1, into slow number 2 is how some of the drivers may describe that sequence of corners, redesigned in 2010, and it's absolutely terrible to drive. Let me tell you, as a driver, I don't want to put any sugar on top of those 2 corners. Coming into this last section, he's got Gotts behind him, so he's obviously overtaken on this lap. Coming into Brooklands, and we can see this great drone shot. It's such a good way of seeing that corner, isn't it? Into the last corner. What's he going to be able to do as he comes out of this onto the checkered flag already? This second session is finished.
It does fly by, doesn't it? And, well, has the checkered flag come out at the right time, perhaps, for Maxi Gertz? Because actually Sandy Mitchell is improving in the first sector, could get challenged for pole. What can Dries van Tor do? Across the line he will go. And for van Tor, it's not even a personal best within this session, so that car will line up no better than 3rd on the grid. Through just behind it, look, went Maximilian Gertz. He's not going to improve. The one potential fly in the 2Cs ointment will be perhaps Sandy Mitchell, who will be flying and really pushing hard in the middle part of the lap. Here he comes out of Aintree, fastest of anybody, Sector 1. Not a brilliant Sector 2. Sector 3, is it going to be an improvement or not? He's getting a tow from one of the BMWs, but no, not improving, so it might be too little, too late for Sandy Mitchell, who I suspect backed off a little bit mid-session to try and get some life back into the tyres. It almost worked, but I think maybe the outside of row number 1 is the best it will get for the current qualifying lap record holder, and in fact, he is diving for the pit lane. So Sandy Mitchell then will settle for second best on this occasion.
I can see the yellow alarm at the bottom of his dash, fuel level low. So Barwell were racy with that. That alarm normally gets triggered when the bottom of the fuel tank starts to surge. So he'll be in the collecting pot there, getting all the fuel, driving straight down probably to scrutineering, or will he stop at the Barwell garage? He's already gone past the Barwell garage, so cars need to be scrutineered, need to make sure they were legal, ride heights, weights, any cheats the teams might have tried to hide. The scrutineers will prise open those cars, trying to spot. It's a good game of cat and mouse. It's only cheating if you get caught.
Spoken like a true professional racing driver. Well, it is Mercedes on top then in GT3, but don't go anywhere. That's only half of qualifying done here for the Silverstone 500. We've still got the small matter of the GT4 grid, which is equally as competitive to the GT3s to come. So 2 more qualifying sessions on their way. Well, the 22 GT3 cars entered this weekend. We'll be leaving the circuit once the track is ready. We'll get our second half of qualifying underway. Well, after session 1, the number 18 Mercedes was 4/10 up the road by the end of qualifying 2, only just under a tenth and a half, but that is enough for Maximilian Götz and Kevin Say to line up on pole position for the Silverstone 500. The combined tyres putting the 2Cs Motorsport car ahead of the Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini of Sandy Mitchell and Alex Martin. Vanthoor and Lung will line up third provisionally, ahead of a couple of McLarens. The Smalley and Balfe Garage 59 example just getting the better of the Gamble and Radcliffe car from Optimum Motorsport. Then it's Keenan Loggy for 2Cs, 2 Mercedes in the top half dozen, with Rob Collard and Ricky Collard only 7th, ahead of Marcus Clutton and Morgan Tilbrook. Johnny Adam and Giacomo Petrobelli give the Aston Martin fans something to cheer about getting into the top 10, whilst Raffaele Marcello and John Ferguson will start from 10th. Then it's the J&S Racing Audi, the Beechdean Aston Martin, the number 67 Orange Racing by JMH car of Tom Roach and Simon Orange will start 13th, ahead of Martin Plowman and Mark Smith. The Nearys, Richard and his son Sam, birthday boy Sam, 22 today, only 15th unfortunately, not much to celebrate with that. Ewan Hankey and Lucky Kira are 16th, ahead of the returning Jan Mardenborough and Chris Buncombe. Then it's Rueda and Gilbert, Rolich and Topham. And then outside the top 20, Lewis Plato and Carl Cavers, and Dan Harper, as talented as he is, just could not overcome that poor first session in the number 14 Century Motorsport car, which will tail the GT3 field. So that is half of our excitement done then. The GT3 qualifying sessions are complete, and it looks like being a hugely competitive Silverstone 500, as it always is here in 2024. The AM drivers got the first opportunity to head to the circuit, and there was an early benchmark set by the Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini. That was competitive in both sessions. It was Rob Collard, former champion, in the car for session number 1, but the pace was ultimately set in Q1 by Kevin Say. The 2Cs Motorsport Mercedes, which often goes well here, was 4/10 better than the rest after the first half of GT3 qualifying. Then it was the turn of the pros, and Sandy Mitchell was immediately on a charge, beating his own qualifying lap record to go fastest in Q2. But would it be enough to snatch pole position? The McLarens, which seemed to come on strong in the second half of Q1, were largely anonymous in Q2, but 2 of them will start within the top 6 on the grid, whilst the reigning champion, returning Darren Leung, will be at the pointy end as well. Both Barwell Motorsport Lamborghinis had moments to shine. Sandy Mitchell's qualifying lap record, though, ultimately not quite enough for provisional pole position, which went the way of 2Cs Motorsports. And that, Joe, was only part 1 of qualifying. GT4's set to head out onto the circuit very shortly. We'll get to that in a moment or two, but for now, let's head down into the pit lane and catch up with Bryn Lucas.
Yeah, thanks very much, Andy. I'm here with Mark Lemmer, and I tell you what, Barwell, they always look like they're going to do well at Silverstone because they pretty much always do well at Silverstone, and it's been a decent start. Great time out at Alton Park for both of your sets of drivers, and it's a pretty good start here as well.
Yeah, it's obviously it was always going to be a tough quali with the quality of drivers in. It's fantastic with this lineup, but yeah, look like we nailed one there. So happy days.
Just looking at the lap times, I mean, the 2C's car ahead, it was about half a second up on the car in second place, Tilbrook, when it in for the first session. So Sandy had a lot of work to do. He couldn't quite get it on pole, but second place is probably the next best thing, right?
Yeah, Kevin did a mega job in that first session. I think Rob and Alex were tidy, but Kevin's been, I think, in the car. This is his third weekend in a row, and he's done a good job. So half a second is too much to claw back, but we did our best. We were on the front row, and it was a mega lap from Sandy.
Yeah. Second and seventh is not a bad place to start the Silverstone 500. We look forward to tomorrow.
Cheers, thanks.
Back to you, Andy.
Thank you very much, Bryn. Yeah, Barwell Motorsport, you can never count them out, can you? Especially in a race in which they've had so much success. And I think Mark Lemmer, Joe, was pretty satisfied there. I know I said at the start, bigged it up. There's lots of prestige that comes with starting from pole position. But of all people in this pit lane, Mark knows that it's not everything, is it?
Yeah, Babyface Assassin is a serial winner. I've raced for Barwell Motorsport. I've had him on the end of the radio effing and jeffing at me when I haven't been doing exactly as he demanded. And unfortunately, he was always right. So he really, like I said earlier, instills a winning mentality across that Barwell team. And that goes all the way from the drivers into the team. This drone is amazing. Look at how many cars are there. The support, paddock. You see the GT4s just coming into shot. I assume it's a drone, not just a very tall camera operator, but it really gives you a perspective that you're just not used to seeing, and I love it from a modern perspective. You see the cars really working from a different angle, but actually makes Silverstone look quite bright and sunny, doesn't it? I can tell you not. It's when we were interviewing Kevin Sage, you actually see the condensation on his breath. It is cold here. It is grim.
It is, but the action hotting up on track now with the GT4 cars heading out onto the circuit, and as always, really, a lot of the headlines are stolen by the GT3 field, but make no mistake, GT4, which for the last 2 or 3 years I felt was as competitive as it could be, just keeps on taking another step forward. More and more talented drivers, particularly the young up-and-coming GT stars, are making their way into GT4 and making it one of the most exciting places to come and race in the United Kingdom. We've got cars from Toyota, Mercedes, Lotus, McLaren, BMW, Ginetta, and of course the Ford Mustangs as well. We've even got the Audi out there with Tim Docker at the wheel in the first part of the session, and they're as evenly matched as their GT3 counterparts.
Yeah, obviously, like you said, sometimes overlooked because they are slower, but they're not easier to drive. Why are they slower? They're heavier, they've got less aero, they've got slightly narrower tyres. So as a driver, that only makes it harder to be fast. You're more on the limit earlier on in the speed through the corners, as we see Kavi Jundu coming through out of Club Corner onto the new pitch straight. Car looking really good, the rain light flashing, so it doesn't really affect it, but it might be annoying McDermott a little bit in that paddock Mercedes behind. Obviously, they weren't out in that Mercedes at Alton Park. They were really unfortunate. The torque tube, as they call it, or the prop shaft in my world, snapped, and that caused the engine to over rev. So they fixed the prop, and then the engine was buzzed because of all the obviously friction that was no longer there with the torque tube no longer torquing. So this is really their first race of the year, and obviously Matt Cowley joining him this year, seriously quick, as is Stuart Middleton. Lad I've worked with for a long time, super fast, sometimes overlooked, and a French team new to the series running that Ginetta CMR, doing more and more of Ginetta, and Ginetta entrusting them not to only run Middleton, but obviously the son of owner of Ginetta, Lawrence Tomlinson, Freddie Tomlinson, who in his own right is getting rapid, more and more prototype racing now in European Le Mans series. So I think they're going to be a very good lineup for this weekend.
Yeah, Silverstone wasn't always a Ginetta track, really, was it? But this car definitely getting quicker, and it'll be interesting to see how they get on. Well, at the moment, it is very much a Ginetta track, because it's Ginetta to the top of the tyres, by quite some way, actually. That gap will start coming down, but Stuart Middleton with the early benchmark of a 209.2. It is Blake Anglis who goes second quickest in the number 11 McLaren, and that's really it for the representative times at the moment. Others will start to filter in. The Mustang there, number 62, goes third quickest, as we come back to Jack Brown aboard the Optimum Motorsport McLaren, which makes its way through Village and the Loop faster than anybody else so far in sectors 1 and 2. And the McLaren, which really is a good all-rounder, isn't it? We say this about the GT3 example, but I think particularly in GT4, there isn't really a track seemingly that doesn't suit this car.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And speaking to the drivers, he's half a second up. This is going to be a good lap. I thought pole was going to be a high 8, but I think this is on to be like an 8.6 most probably at the moment. But yeah, speaking to the drivers of the Artura, most would complain about top speed, but I think teams are starting to dial it in. You can take a bit of wing off potentially to help with that and maybe take the negative. Jack Brown in his second year now with Optimum in that car. Looks really good in yellow, I have to say. It was orange last year, an 8.9, so it does go pole, but just there. His last sector was the only one that wasn't a purple, and it was actually 4/10 off purple, so that's why it wasn't the 8.6 that I predicted. It wasn't my fault, it was him. So I think pole still then could be a mid to high 8 as we go through Magnussen Beckett's car rolling through nice. The GT4 cars, you can see they're that bit softer, a bit more road car-y. The GT4s are typically 80% road car, whereas the GT3s are normally 80% bespoke race car bits, only inheriting 20% from their road going cousins. But yeah, I think Jack's going well here, still a clear lap. Really nice to get that car in now at Stowe. Trail the brake in, keep the front load. You can see how loaded that front corner is, the rear just dangling along. We can't quite see if he's legal on track limits or we won't dob him in, but looking like a good start to the lap. A little bit busier here. You can see one of the Mahiki Mustangs in front of the Mustang. The size difference rather laughable, isn't it? And that's how good a job the balance of performance does. How can it be that you can make a small tiny Lotus go as big as an aircraft carrier Mustang around lots of different tracks? But the BOP guys at SRO have got so many metrics now. We're very rarely seeing a wide disparity of lap times. Will Moore crossing the line. P5 2:10.0. It's getting pretty close, isn't it, at the top end?
It is indeed. The fastest time we've seen, by the way, that time set by Jack Brown, a 2:08.984, is a new qualifying lap record. Beats Sen and Fielding's lap from a couple of years ago that was a 2:09.1. So immediately, even in Q1, the GT4 cars going quicker than we've ever seen before around the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, and there's every chance they will continue to get quicker again. As with GT3, it's the combined times between this session, qualifying 3, and qualifying 4 that will come later on that will set the grid. But so far so good for the McLaren, which is 2/10 up on the Ginetta, number 56 of Stuart Middleton, which is second quickest. Anglis down to third, and actually that's it within the first second. Those three are nearly a full second apart from each other. It then gets very close. Next in line, Mikey Porter, fourth, is only 68,000 slower, 25 thousandths quicker than the number the number 62 Mustang, which we're following here, heading down through Club Corner. Will Moore. But yeah, those top two, Joe, have really separated themselves.
Yeah, and completely different cars, obviously. Mid-engine McLaren, front-engined Ginetta. So the only thing they really share is they're both made in the UK, I guess. One up north and one in Woking. And I've actually driven both, and they couldn't be more different how they generate their lap time. But like I said, the BOP doing a mega job. Just looking down the order, the Pro-Am element here is always interesting at Silverstone. So we've got two classes like GT3, but in GT4, the silver pairings get an extra 12 seconds in their 3 mandatory pit stops. So it really swings it to the Pro-Ams, and we've seen a mega lap from Dawson. They had such a strong Oulton Park in that Mercedes from Team Parker. But at the moment, Dawson is leading Pro-Am, but 6th overall as well. Out of 19 cars, that's an amazing job there, as we see a couple of cars getting way too close in qualifying. As a driver, yes, you catch up, but it's only 10 minutes, you're only doing 5 laps. You've got to find a gap. 19 cars, yes, but there's 5.5 kilometres of real estate here to find. So Sai Sanjay's in front. He'll be happy enough with that, but the Breakall Mercedes behind him will be struggling a little bit to get a clear lap, and they will be going on to their last lap now. Only 45 seconds. Where does the time go? It evaporates in these qualifying sessions, doesn't it? And the drivers will use that as an excuse, I'm sure, if they haven't got their lap in. But yeah, these guys need to find a bit of clear lap, which they're not going to do because it's their last one.
Indeed they are. 35 seconds left on the clock then, so time fast running out. Actually not been quite such a frenetic session this. Lots of the times that came in within the first sort of 5-6 minutes of the session have stood now as the fastest lap times. So we're getting the odd personal best sector thrown in here and there, but no one yet really challenging that time set by Jack Brown. Middleton second still and Anglis third, so no change there. We have had a movement into the top 10 for Kavi Jundu in the Toyota. Really is the only change we've had for a while. On board though with the championship leading car, the number 31 machine, the Mercedes, which was so effective at Oulton Park, working equally well at a very different kind of racetrack.
Yeah, you can just hear how much quieter it is than the GT3. You're actually hearing the pickup flicking up off those front tyres onto the chassis, and that's those metallic dingings you're getting. Charles Dawson coming down the hanger straight, braking just after the gravel trap here. Where are we going to go? just after, was he? Get the car in, down a couple of gears, use the curb to get rid of some of the understeer, get it in tight, unwind the lock, don't touch the green bit, pretend it's lava, over to the right, braking just at the start of the curb on the right. Now, down 3 gears most probably, just the 2, so down to 3rd, into the right, get the front in, full throttle, unwind the lock again, bring it in tight here, should be flat, don't touch the big red sausage, that's scary, all the way out. Into the new turn 1, Abbey, like I said, really fast. Is he going to just have a little lift? Let's listen. And a downshift, a tiny brake. I'm surprised at that. Normally the cars there just need a lift to get the front end in. Hold it over to the left. A big stop here. This is where we see our lunges in the race, bringing the car in. Short squirt in now, over to the left-hand side. Brake, get the car in, and again, go. What's the traction like? Too much wheel spin, didn't have much oversteer. Through the easy flat of loop onto the Wellington straight. Still got space in front. What's this lap looking like? Just looking at the timing screen. No green sectors, so it shouldn't be an improvement. And you look how far off, as he does a green sector 3, just to spike me into Brooklands. Bring the car in, you can cut the inside a little bit there if you need. Looks like he runs wide in the middle here, but that's how it should be. A double apex, bring it in. Get a nice straight line on your exits. You can get this car to accelerate. Snap of oversteer there. You can see him working on the steering wheel through the last corner, through Woodcote, go the shortest distance you can, run it to the line, check a flag out. What was the lap? It was only a 10th slower, so it was worth finishing, but now he's got to get back quickly to get that car back over to Seb Morris.
Oh, well, that's the problem, isn't it? It had to be a heck of a final sector in order to improve upon his previous best, which he didn't manage to do. So now another 2.5 minutes will be spent getting the car back to the pit lane. Then they've got to change the tyres, get the driver out, get the other driver in. And the likelihood is the next session will have started by then, because actually it's going to be starting in less than 3 minutes' time. So, yeah, about when that car gets back to the pit lane, the others will be being released from the other end. But anyway, it is McLaren on top in Q3, but the first part of GT4 qualifying here at Silverstone. There is Seb Morris getting ready to jump into his car and head out onto the circuit. But Jack Brown fastest, he sets a provisional, anyway, new qualifying lap record here at Silverstone. And now, much more excitingly, he's about to catch up with Bryn Lucas.
Thanks very much, Andy. Yeah, I'm here next to Jack. It was a pretty decent first lap, or a decent lap for you for qualifying. Looking ahead, 2 tenths up on Stuart Middleton behind in second place, and you've given your teammate there a pretty good head start.
Yeah, I think that's a good little advantage to be going into Q2 with. Just trying to piece it all together, really. Today's been a bit up and down with the weather, so for me it was just a case of trying to put it all together, and we did. So yeah, no, just need Zach now to do his bit, and I think we should have a good, front row start tomorrow.
It's important to start well here at Silverstone for the 500 tomorrow. It's a very long race, we know, a 3-hour race, but what you did at Alton Park, I mean, a decent podium and 4th place in that second race, it sets you up perfectly, doesn't it, for the Silverstone 500, because you have less pit stop compensation time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But, anything can happen at the Silverstone 500. Last year we got lucky with a safety car and ended up finishing a lap in front. But, it's anyone's guess of who could win. It honestly could be anyone. So
sticking on pole is always a good help. So we wish you very good luck for tomorrow. Back to you, Andy.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bryn. So, yeah, brilliant effort that from Jack Brown, who wasn't getting too carried away there, was he? He knows that that's only part of the job done, but seemed to have every faith in his teammate Zach Meakin that he could pilot the Optimum Motorsport McLaren to the #1 spot on the grid. But unlike in GT3 qualifying, where there was the best part of half a second to play with for the provisional pole sitters, here Brown only 2 tenths quicker than Stuart Middleton. So, Joe, there is a chance that we could see that change hands in session 2.
Yeah, that's Meaking versus Tomlinson, isn't it? As Brown hands over to Meaking and Middleton hands over to Tomlinson. So that's going to be a really good fight, actually. I think it's going to be a tight scrap. I don't quite know where my money is. My mouth is big enough. I'm not sure my money is. I think I would probably just back Meaking, purely that he's been in the car more than Tomlinson, who's been jumping in and out of GTs and prototypes. So it's going to be real interesting to see where that one goes.
Well, for now, it is McLaren on top. Optimum Motorsports' Jack Brown getting the job done by just over 2 tenths of a second from Stuart Middleton. But as Joe said, part 2 of qualifying is not going to be worth missing. Then it is Mikey Porter for Aston Martin and Pulsetti Motorsport, who was 3rd, with Blake Anglis in the 2nd of the McLaren's 4th. Bill Moore put the Mustang 5th fastest. Then it was Sai Sanjay in his race lab McLaren 6th, ahead of Dawson, the championship leader 7th. Marco Signoretti, back in the Mustang again this year, was 8th, ahead of the 1st of the Mahiki Racing Lotus cars, 9th fastest in the end for them, with Ravi Ramyi completing the top 10. Then Kavi Jundu in the lone Toyota was 11th. Mark Warren was 12th. Then it was the Ram Racing Mercedes, the TWS Racing Ginetta of Colin White was 14th. Ian Goff for Century Motorsport will be a tad disappointed, I suspect, with 15th, ahead of Ed McDermott's Paddock Motorsport Mercedes in 16th. Ian Duggan for the second Lotus was 17th, ahead of Carl Garnett, and Tim Docker completing the GT4 field after part 1 of GT4 qualifying. So cars will, in fact, have been released out onto the circuit. We're already 35 seconds into our final part of qualifying. The qualifying hour racing by here at Silverstone, and there goes the championship leading car. Winners of the second race last time out at Alton Park in pretty challenging conditions, it must be said. The car that currently would be sitting on pole position is still sat up on the jacks in pit lane, so Zach Meakin in no immediate rush to head out on track, Jem.
No, I think that's because we saw his teammate Brown really only get one lap before the tyre dropped off. Actually racing that exact car last year. I know the Optimum guys like to want to get the peak out of it. Adam there, the engineer, the car controller holding the lollipop, really aggressive with his setup like it should be. And it just means that you've got to find your window. You don't want to just go out meandering and get caught up in a load of traffic. Just wait, chill. 10 minutes doesn't seem like a lot, but if you only need 2 minutes and 8 seconds, hopefully, to do your time, then it's only a little bit of that session. You can see some of the cars still weaving. All the teams use tyre ovens, so the tyres were put in these big tents, essentially, with some big heaters, getting them up to any temperature, up to 120 degrees. But the option was anywhere between 90 and 100, but sometimes teams just kind of underbake it a little bit, not to take the peak away and leave it to the driver on this outlap to just finish off that final bit. GT4 Mercedes always looks good. Love the livery of that Ram car. We've seen it up there in the past. I think Alton Park was okay for that number 17, but wasn't amazing by their own ones. Hopkinson super fast and getting into that car more and more the laps he gets, and it's easy to forget sometimes these drivers have to jump into new cars each year and potentially learn a huge amount of differences, and it's not easy, and the more laps you do, the quicker you get, and you see that over the season. Some drivers that start strong kind of get caught up by the new class, who by the end of the year are finishing their year strong.
Indeed so. So the number 17 Mercedes then turns down through Brooklands and misses the apex by a country mile. It is not one of the cars being investigated for being released from the pit lane too early in Q3, but in fairness, nearly half the field are. So we may have some post-session penalties. Whether they affect the grid positions, you'll have to head to social media overnight to find out. But for now, we'll focus on the times. A reminder that the timing tower on the left-hand side of your screen, that shows the combined times. So if you're following along at home on TSL timing, it might not match up exactly with what it says on the screen, but what it says on the screen is the grid order as it will stand at the end of the session. Matt Cowley then through Stowe Corner. Still sort of getting used to saying Matt Cowley in the Mercedes. We've been so used to seeing him in the wheel of one of the Academy Mustangs over recent years. This car, on the face of it, not too dissimilar. It's front-engined at least, but I guess really that's where the similarities end.
Yeah, it's about a third the size straight away, isn't it? But no, you're right. Front engine, V8, naturally aspirated, but much smaller than Mercedes, so generates its lap time more in the corner. The Mustang needs a bit more power to make up for its American inequalities. I couldn't say that very well, did I? Down the straights, basically. And we're seeing it get better and better, this Mercedes as well, because there hasn't been many in British GT over the years, but now it's been the go-to car. It's now the most popular car on the grid. I think teams really favouring its sort of Germanic, metronomic sort of performance. Very reliable. Yes, this car DNF'd at Alton Park, just to shoot myself in the foot with my own statement, but the running cost of this car is the lowest, and motorsport is expensive. But if you can start to get the cost down, then you can do more testing, you get faster. It's not always a money-saving exercise, it's a money-diverting exercise into performance. And I think that's why that Mercedes is becoming so popular.
Which is an interesting point to make, actually, because, of course, the whole idea of the balanced performance is that you can't just buy yourself a faster car, but if there is still a way that you can, you know, make savings elsewhere, then that maybe does make one car a little bit more desirable over others. It's desirable, really, though, because it is quick, and Matt Cowley is proving that, although, of course, he goes to the top of the times because he's the only driver at the moment in qualifying for to have set a lap time, but that was a 2:10.9 1:08.3, so not a bad opening effort, but we know that they can go quicker than that, as we saw in the first part of qualifying when we were into the high 2:08. Here comes Luca Hopkinson now at the wheel of the distinctively liveried number 17 Mercedes AMG, but at the moment it is Zach Meakin, rather predictably I suppose, going fastest of anybody in Sector 1 until the number 20 Lotus goes quicker actually. Gordy Much, who is another bit of an underrated driver, I think, really, Gordy. That car not featuring towards the top of the provisional grid at the moment, but going quickly in the early stages of our final part of qualifying.
Yeah, he was really quick at Alton Park actually in the races, kind of went unnoticed because of where the car was at the time, but that car is quick, and Gordy, like you said, very underrated. Seb Morris breaks the beam, goes second now overall, so he's really dragged that car up, a 2:92 as well, so super quick there. Seeing a mega time from Vaughan as well as we go to Meakin finishing his lap. Has he got that sub 9-minute lap in him? I still think there's an 8.6 there from watching Brown's sector times. This is where the McLaren's at its weakest in this sector 4. Tomlinson an 8.9, so he does beat the 9 barrier like his teammate Middleton did. It's really these two at the moment, isn't it, fighting. What have we got? Get the car out the corner. Didn't really use all of the track. I'm surprised at that. Like I said in the GT3, you want to unwind the lock, let the car speed up as much as you can. He's going to break the beam. Where are we going to be in this session? An 8.947, 200ths quicker than Tomlinson. And that is P1 in this session, but overall as well still.
And has stolen that qualifying lap record away from his teammate, but only just by about 400ths of a second. So that is the new fastest lap time we've seen so far today, and it cements their position at the top of the grid, provisionally at least. But can he go any quicker? We'll have to wait and see. Tomlinson, in fairness, doing his best to respond with a personal best in Sector 1. He's not the only one, though. Lots of drivers are now starting to go quickly, including Gordy Much, who has gone to the top of the times in Q4, just over 2/10 quicker than Zach Meakin's gone, actually. So that is now very comfortably the new lap record. But unfortunately, on combined times, only good enough for 12th.
Yeah, and that is a 2:08.7, so that is right on the money where I think that really should be. Yeah, like you said, 12th overall, but 6th in class. So in Pro-Am, that's going to be an interesting fight as we see Alex Walker in the paddock McLaren going through. You can hear the tyres squealing as it comes off that serrated curb. When you see a slow-mo of the tyre hitting those curbs, it's something as a driver you actually don't want to see, the flex going through it, the load. It's really hard to get the best out of these Pirellis. You want to go as low as you can with the tyre pressure. It lets the tyre flex more, generate more grip. Go too low and the thing explodes. So that was too far. But there's a real fine balance. Normally sort of 1.75 bar, which is quite low. It's probably 24, 25 PSI in old money. So if you were in your road car, you're in your mid-30s. This car's faster, more load, and you're going lower than that. The risk is there, but so's the performance coming out the last corner. I actually saw Meakin have a big slide in the option McLaren out there. That's much nicer, much more optimized in letting the car flow. What's the overall lap time going to be? Breaks the beam. You can see the thick white line there, 2:09.6. Really good to get under the 2:10s, but not quite enough to really lift that car into the top end of this qualifying.
Had a few drivers doing great things within this session, but not necessarily impacting grid order. Conversely, Jamie Day has just cemented 3rd place provisionally on the grid, despite only being 14th quickest in this session, but that is at least enough for now to keep the Aston Martin number 7 on the inside of row number 2 of the grid, but that could still change. He's only a 10th.5 quicker than the number 11 car of Alex Walker, the Paddock Motorsport McLaren that we were just following. Here comes the Audi, meanwhile. Number 79 makes its way out onto the Hanger Straight. Jordan Albert back in British GT again, sharing the car with Tim Docker, who's done some touring car racing back in the past. But this car only 18th on combined times, but the Stella Audi, well, the Forsetti Audi it is, which we've seen go so strongly in GT4 over the years here in the UK, struggling to move its way up the grid for the time being. Another personal best first sector as well for Freddie Tomlinson. He's trying, isn't he, Joe, but just can't quite hook it together over a full lap.
Yeah, and his second sector isn't green, but it's really close actually. So sometimes the timing screen lures you in. Green is really nice. You get attracted to that like a moth, and yellow's dirty. You hate it, but it might only be yellow by 100 for 1,000. Yep. So you've got to try and sometimes remember that when you're watching it and trying to coach the driver potentially there. So he's still in with a chance. Meakin looks like he's kind of dropped out, but he's just in a purple speed trap. So the car's obviously still delivering some straight line performance, but maybe the tyre's just dropping off a little bit there. Just looking down the timing screens, the majority of the colour is yellow, so it doesn't look like many people are going to improve with less than 10 seconds remaining. So people may just be starting another lap, but I can't really see many people moving in the next 2.5 minutes.
Interesting graphic there on the bottom right corner of your screen. The 4 sectors that Joe mentioned earlier on that the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit split into, well, they are the cars that are quickest in each of those individual sectors. So the number 90 McLaren, top of the times, making most of its lap time in the middle part of the lap, from Stowe all the way around to the Wellington Straight. But interestingly, the Lotus of Gordy much fastest in sector 1, and the championship leading Mercedes, number 31, fastest through the final sector. I think Silverstone is one of those tracks, Joe, that really demonstrates which cars work in certain kinds of corners. The low speed stuff at the end of the lap, the front engine Mercedes able to rotate through Brooklands and Luffield makes it strong, whereas the mid-engine cars perhaps change direction better at high speed.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, and you've probably described it better than me, and it's kind of the high speed nature that you need confidence in the car. And that's normally what a mid-engine does. It's why all Formula 1 cars, I assume, follow that formula of a mid-engine strapped to a carbon chassis, which the McLaren obviously is the only one with the carbon tub, but the Lotus with that. I would say here Gordy Much would probably be claiming that sector 1 is the sector where you need the biggest minerals. That's the one where you need to keep the minimum speeds up. It's a huge slide for Dan Vaughan. Started off cool. I thought that was going to be a good Instagram reel, but the grass bit, I guess he can just edit that bit later. But I'd say that was probably just proving to the team the rear tyre had gone, and I will be boxing this lap. Thank you very much.
Message received loud and clear, I suspect, down in the pit lane. That car at the moment, though, would line up 5th on the grid, so not bad going for Dan Vaughan, who pulls out of the way of one of the Mercedes. There is the Forsetti Audi in the pit lane, car number 79, which ended up 8th in the hands of Jordan Albert in that session, which will be, unfortunately, only good enough for 18th overall, 10th in class on the grid. But it's a long race tomorrow, and with strategy, potential safety cars, potential weather maybe coming in tomorrow afternoon as well. I wouldn't count anybody out just yet, but Zach Meakin and Jack Brown have made qualifying their own. It's not quite going to be the perfect double. They were fastest in session 1, second fastest in session 2, but it is going to be enough for pole position by the looks of it, by just under a quarter of a second, with the Ginetta starting alongside them. Here comes Nathan Harrison, who we've seen more often in the past in front-wheel drive tin tops, really. Renault Clio's, Minis, and the Lotus with Mahiki Racing is 11th on the grid. Not bad, really. They're learning that car all the time. Every track they take it to, they're going to have so much to try and get through in the practice sessions, which were so heavily interrupted by the weather earlier on. So actually, knocking on the door of the top 10, only, what, 4 thousandths away from a top 10 grid position. Not bad.
Really good. And yeah, new team, new car, new drivers that you're inheriting there. So I think, again, they'll be really positive for the race coming up. And same with the Forsetti Aston, actually, in front. New team to British GT this year with an Evo car as well. As we go to the sister car, that isn't the same car that's just teleported back. That's Gordy Much giving us a wave. P1 in his session, so really, really good job by that. I think he's cheering, nothing rude there with his hand gestures. They'll probably just be keeping him in the car just because he's going to have to drive down to scrutineering anyway, so the mechanics are lazy, they don't want to push it, so just let Gordy drive down there. Like I said, the GT3s, they'll be checking all the parts to homologation. All of these manufacturers have to submit documents to prove that they're the right parts, so the teams then can't kind of get into their own arms race of developing components.
Well, it is McLaren on top here at Silverstone, at least within GT4 anyway. Zach Meakin and Jack Brown will start from pole position for the Silverstone 500 tomorrow afternoon, but it will be Ginetta who start alongside them, Freddie Tomlinson and Stuart Middleton within a quarter of a second of pole position. Then it was JB Day and Mikey Porter, the youngest driver on the grid. Mikey Porter, his car will start from third, ahead of the second of the McLarens. That's the Paddock Motorsport example number 11. Dan Vaughan and Kavi Jundu wrestled the Toyota to 5th on the grid, ahead of former champion Seb Morris and Charles Dawson for Team Park Racing 6th. Then it was the second of the Astons, that was the Forsetti Motorsport example, starting 7th. The second Ginetta is 8th for CWS Racing. Race Labs McLaren will start 9th, and Century Motorsports BMW will complete the top 10. Then the first of the Lotus, that was Nathan Harrison putting that car 11th in the air. Matt Nicol-Jones, the first of the Mustangs, will be 12th, ahead of Ram Racing, Mahiki Racing, Academy's second Mustang, Century, Paddock, Stella and Brakel Racing at the back. Right then, let's head down to pit lane. We heard from Jack Brown earlier on. Let's hear from him again with Bryn Lucas.
Why not? 2 jacks for the price of 1, hey? Well, it's gone pretty well for you so far here today. But looking ahead at tomorrow, you start on pole here, but we know how hard it is for a silver pair to win at the Silverstone 500 because of the extra time you have to spend in the pits for each pit stop that you have. So what's the approach ahead of tomorrow? Let's get through today first of all. What's the ahead of you for tomorrow?
Well, I've not thought too much about the approach, but I know what we will be doing, which is just keeping things consistent, chipping away at the AMs when you know, whoever's in the car is racing the AMs. Just trying to keep it clean, stay out of trouble, and that is, you know, if you can do that, you're on a good foot to get a decent result. You know, especially in a race like this at the Silverstone 500. So that will be our goal for sure.
Stay out of trouble, bring it home in first place ideally. There you go. Good luck tomorrow. Back to you, Andy.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bryn. So McLaren on top then, a fantastic performance from them, and they will be starting from the front of the Silverstone 500, which starts at 12:30 tomorrow afternoon with build-up from midday. Be sure to tune in live on Sky Sports F1 and on YouTube as well for all of the action in this crown jewel event in the British GT Championship. The stage is set perfectly. Myself, Andy McEwen, Joe Osborne and Bryn Lucas will all be back to talk you through the action tomorrow afternoon. You won't want to miss what is set to be a fantastic third round of the British GT Championship.